In the year 1240, exactly 19 years after the death of the man the world feared as the name Genghis Khan, a small circle of princes and scribes gathered in a felt yurt on the upper Karulan River under the strictest oath of silence. And there, by the flickering light of butter lamps and beneath a ceiling painted with the 9 white banners of the Borjigin clan, they began to write the only book the Mongols would ever write about themselves, a forbidden chronicle in Uyghur Mongolian script whose very existence was punishable by death if revealed to any outsider, a text that would be copied by hand for 7 centuries, locked in cedar boxes, hidden in monastery vaults, carried across deserts and mountains by loyal descendants who would sooner die than let a single page fall into foreign hands. A book that stripped away the myth of the invincible demon king and revealed instead the raw, bleeding humanity of a boy named Temujin, who once wept over a dead hawk, who was sold into slavery at 9, who watched his poisoned father vomit blood onto the grass, who killed his own half-brother over a fish, who was betrayed by childhood friends, captured, paraded in a wooden kang, starved, beaten, and yet rose through sheer will and terror to unite the warring tribes of the steppe and birth the largest land empire ever known. A book that recorded not only victories but tears, not only the Yasa law that governed with iron, but the private conversations in the yurt at night, the shaman's drumbeats, the blood oaths sworn under the eternal blue sky, the moments of doubt. The nights Genghis sat alone staring at the stars, asking why heaven had chosen him to kill so many. A book that humanized the Scourge of God so completely that the Mongol nobility themselves decided the world must never read it. And for almost 700 years they succeeded, keeping the secret history of the Mongols sealed from every Persian chronicler, every Chinese historian, every European traveler, until a single copy, hidden in the Beijing palace, was finally deciphered in the late 19th century, and the world discovered that the conqueror who murdered millions had once been a terrified child who cried when his mother sang him the old songs of the steppe. The story begins not with thunder and conquest, but with hunger and snow. Temujin was born in 1162 on the banks of the Onon River, clutching a blood clot the size of a knucklebone, a sign the shamans declared meant he would hold the world in his fist. Yet by the time he was 9, his father Yesuge the Brave had been poisoned by Tatar rivals. The Taichi-Ud clan had abandoned his widowed mother, Hoelun, and her 5 children on the open steppe with nothing but a single mare and 8 geldings. And the boy who would one day make emperors tremble was reduced to digging roots, catching marmots with a snare, and watching his half-brother Bekta steal food from his younger siblings until one afternoon, in a rage born of starvation, Temujin and his brother Kasar shot Bekta through the heart with arrows and left his body for the wolves, an act that horrified Hoelun but taught the future Khan the first lesson of power. Mercy is a luxury the weak cannot afford. Captured soon after by the Taichi-Ud, he was forced to wear a wooden kangwe around his neck, paraded from camp to camp as a trophy, beaten daily, fed only scraps, until one night during a drunken feast, he smashed the kangwe against a yurt pole, killed his guard with the splintered wood, and escaped into the forest where he survived by eating wild onions and hiding in a river until his pursuers gave up. And in those dark weeks, the boy learned the second lesson. The world respects only strength, and weakness invites death. Years of betrayal followed. His childhood Anda, blood brother, Jamukha, who had once sworn eternal friendship by exchanging golden arrows, turned against him when Temujin's star rose too fast, captured him again, forced him to kneel in the snow, and only the intervention of a sympathetic guard allowed escape once more. His wife Berta was kidnapped by Merkits in revenge for an ancient slight and held for 8 months until Temujin, with the help of Jamukha and the Keret Khan Togrul, rescued her. But the child she bore 9 months later, Jochi, would forever carry the stain of possible Merkit blood and poison the succession for generations. Each wound, each betrayal, each night spent shivering in the open steppe, hardened the boy into something new, a man who trusted almost no one, who remembered every insult, who rewarded loyalty with empires and punished disloyalty with annihilation, and the same man who would later sit alone in his yurt after the fall of Zhongdu and weep uncontrollably because the smell of blood reminded him of his father's poisoned corpse. The secret history does not hide the tears. It records the night after the great victory over the Naiman in 1204, when Temujin, drunk on Irag, climbed a hill and screamed at the moon, asking why heaven had made him kill so many and how his old friend Jamukha, now a prisoner, was brought before him in chains and offered mercy if he would submit, only for Jamukha to request death without blood so their souls could remain friends in the afterlife, and Genghis granted it, having him executed by breaking the back without spilling blood on the ground, then wept openly in front of his generals for the first time any man could remember. It records the moment after the conquest of the Jin in 1215, when Genghis walked through the burning streets of Zhongdu and suddenly stopped, turned to his bodyguard and said, "I have become death," before ordering the slaughter stopped, because the ghosts were too many. It records the private councils, where he confessed fear that his sons were not strong enough to hold what he had built, where he spoke of nightmares in which the empire crumbled like dry felt, where he admitted that the Yasa, his great law code carved on iron tablets and kept in a locked chest, was born not from divine inspiration, but from the memory of a starving child who had no law to protect him. The book is mercilessly honest about power. It shows how Genghis used marriage alliances like weapons, giving his daughters to rival khans not as brides, but as spies and administrators who would later strangle their husbands in their sleep on his orders. It reveals the shaman Teb Tengri's rise to near absolute power, how he humiliated Genghis's youngest brother Temujin in public, how Genghis endured the insult until the moment was right and then had Teb Tengri's back broken in a wrestling match arranged for that purpose, proving that even the voice of heaven could be silenced when it threatened the throne. It describes the creation of the Keshik, the decimal military system, the Yam postal stations, the Garage passport tablets, all born from the memory of a boy who once had to run for his life with no horse, no food, no refuge. And it preserves the voice of the steppe itself, the songs Hoelun sang to her children when wolves howling at night, the smell of roasting marmot, the taste of fermented mare's milk, the feel of frost on a bowstring at -40 degrees, the sound of 10,000 hooves crossing a frozen river, the silence after a battle when only the wind moves across the dead. It records the exact words Genghis spoke when he finally defeated Jamukha. "Once we were as close as the wheels of a single cart, now we are enemies. Let us part without hatred." It records his deathbed warning to his sons, "The sea is vast, but even the sea has shores. My empire has no shores. Guard it well." For 7 centuries, the secret history remained the most dangerous book on earth. Copies were hidden in the luggage of princesses marrying into distant tribes, sewn into saddle blankets, buried beneath monastery floors. When the Manchus conquered China, they seized one copy and locked it in the imperial palace, forbidding translation on pain of death. When Russian scholars finally obtained fragments in the 1800s, they could not believe what they read. The demon who had murdered 40 million people was capable of tenderness, doubt, grief, love. The monster had been human all along, and that, more than any battle or conquest, is why the Mongols kept the book secret for so long, because it revealed the truth they themselves could barely face, that the empire built on oceans of blood had been born from the tears of a starving child who simply refused to die, that the greatest conqueror in history was, beneath the armor and the terror, a man who never stopped being afraid.